Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 21st, 2026 work session of the Town of Ossining. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Meyer. Councilmember Fields Tewell.
Here.
Councilmember Manicchio.
Here.
Councilmember Weiss.
Present.
Supervisor Feldman.
Present.
Supervisor and Town Board announcements.
Okay. Just a reminder that New York State has a burn ban in effect from now until May 14th. For more information, visit dec.ny.gov. Moderate income households in New York may qualify for monthly discounts on their utility bills through the Expanded Energy Affordability Program, EEAP. To learn more, visit nyeeap.com/program. Jazz at the Lodge returns every Thursday night. Visit jazzathelodge.com for more schedule and details. Sustainable Westchester wants to remind everybody that the Grid Rewards program is free to join. Get paid by simply being smart with your electrical usage. Visit sustainablewestchester.org for more information. Bethany Arts Community welcomes artists 21 plus working in any discipline and medium, including visual arts, sculptors, writers, and more, to our fall multidisciplinary residency. Enjoy an environment where artists from different disciplines and walks of life can work in community and near each other, creating opportunities for generative collaboration and cross-pollination. The 2026 Fall Multidisciplinary Residency runs for 1 2-week session of 12 artists from September 22nd to October 6th, 2026. Artists are provided room and board, a private studio conducted to the artist's medium and/or project, 3 meals a day, and a $225 stipend per week upon completion of the residency. If interested, you can apply at bethanyarts.org. The deadline to apply is May 6th. April is Donate Life Month. Celebrate the lives that have been saved and honor those who've been given the gift of life through organ donation. I'd like to strongly encourage anyone who is healthy enough to please learn more about organ donation at donatelife.net. Ossining will be celebrating Arbor Day on Friday, April 24th, this Friday, in the Nelson Sitting Park at 1:30 p.m. Commemorate the 250th anniversary of the United States by joining us to plant a living monument to our history and future. Inspired by the liberty trees of the American Revolution, we are planting a native elm to symbolize our enduring democracy. The 16th Annual Earth Day Festival will be held on Saturday, April 25th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. We will host Westchester County's largest Earth Day celebration at Lewis Inkle Waterfront Park. This free event features live music, eco demonstrations, and sustainable food options for the whole family, put on by Green Ossining. Saturday, May 2nd is a Riverkeeper Sweep. Join hundreds of communities throughout New York City and the Hudson Valley as we all do our part cleaning up the shoreline. For more information, please go to riverkeeper.org. Project Mover will be hosting a free bike skills class on Saturday, May 2nd from 10:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at Neighbors Link. This class will include a classroom presentation followed by an optional on-bike portion. The Sparta Association's Stash the Trash event is scheduled for Sunday, May 3rd from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., starting at the Jug Tavern. Volunteers will be cleaning up the historic Sparta area of Ossining. For more information or to volunteer, please visit spartaassociation.org. The 2026 Summer Sailing Club program is opening registration, supported by the Ossining Community Sailing Club. This program is ready for those who want to learn or already know how to sail. For more information, contact the club at membership@ocsc@yahoo.com. Please remember that Neighbors Link is a great source of information and a great community resource for our immigrant population. Please visit their website at www.neighborslink.org. You can click resources to register to attend informational webinars about knowing your rights in English and in Spanish, and to find contact information for trusted professionals. As always, our Ossining Public Library will be hosting many events, including movies, craft events, meditation, tutoring, yoga, book clubs, and more. Please see their website at ossininglibrary.org for more information. And the Loft LGBTQ plus Community Center has everything from events and programs, resources and presentations, all dedicated to providing support to everyone who's a part of the LGBTQ plus community, including many virtual and in-person support groups and clubs on a multitude of different topics. Please check out their website at loftgaycenter.org for more information. And there are many more fun and interesting events being held locally, and you could look at the supervisor's update on the supervisor's webpage to see them. I think Briarcliff is having their Earth Day on Sunday at Law Park from 10 to 4. So you can do that too. Anybody else? No. Okay.
Hello. This Saturday, April 25th, is National Drug Take Back Day. And so the most important message that everyone wants to get out there is people who are holding, expired medication, specifically opioids, and any kind of medication where if someone underage, God forbid, got their hands on it, would be not a good situation. So they developed this drug take back day. You can bring all of your expired medication to any and almost all police station or your local pharmacy. There is a website on the National DEA website that can help you find where to bring your medications. And it's open all day.
Thank you.
First up, we have discussions. It's to Chapter 183 of Tree Protection and Chapter 117 of the Indian Brook Croton Gorge Watershed Overlay Protection District. And we have Town Planner Valerie Manostra here with us tonight.
Hi, good evening. All right, so we have two other sections we're reviewing. The first for this month, the first is the tree protection. So the edits to this support a couple things. First of all, they support the comprehensive plan, and just tightening up some of the code enforcement issues and concerns that were raised, including removal of trees. But also, this was also a request from not only the Environmental Advisory Council to kind of go through and make edits, but also your town tree arborist, as well as the building department. So this was a combination of requests from all three entities to look at and refine, specifically to look for, reducing any loopholes that are there in terms of a particular property owner taking advantage of trees that can be down but not necessarily needing permits. And then qualifying those particular trees as saying we didn't need a permit. The building department and the tree arborists were saying they were finding some people trying to take advantage of those loopholes by downing trees and then claiming they were already down or they were dying, and in reality they probably weren't. Also providing a little bit more clarity on the process itself and what's required. And then also more or less making adjustments so that it's more in line with the current process that's taking place in the building department. So I'm just going to kind of highlight some of the key changes. First, in the definitions section, specifically just putting a little bit more clarity on what clear cutting is, and also specifically removal of 10 or more trees, each having a diameter breast height of 6 inches or greater on a 1 acre or greater lot within a 12-month period. And so that for lots less than 1 acre, there would be a proportionality reduced by. So for example, if you have a half an acre lot, instead of 10 trees, it would be 5 trees. And we provided an example. That's one of the loopholes, because prior to this, there was just 10 trees on a lot, and you could have a 1/4 acre lot and cut down 10 trees, or you could have a 5 acre lot and cut down 10 trees. So so this is a little bit more, it's preventing the loopholes, but then also giving a little bit more clarity as to how many trees you can cut down. Also, providing a little bit more information as to what a recognized tree expert, because some of the text within the zoning, within the tree protection requires information to be submitted by a tree expert. So this is just clarifying what that tree expert is. The next section that I kind of want to highlight is activities that are permitted without a tree permit. So in this particular section, the revisions included specifically that you could have removal of any tree that is found to be dead or dying, insect infested or otherwise hazardous as determined. And this is where the edits take place in writing business letterhead or of a recognized tree expert and submitted to the building department prior to any tree removal. So this prevents somebody from just saying it was dead or dying. This actually requires some sort of documentation to be submitted. Also, specifically, we are proposing to remove the removal of any tree listed on New York State prohibited or regulated invasive species list. This one was specifically asked by your tree arborist because while, like, for example, the Norway maple is considered an invasive tree, the Norway maples do provide habitat. And so instead of, and what he was finding is that people were cutting those trees down just because they wanted, like, their motive for cutting the trees down was not to remove invasive species in New York State, but for other motives. And they were not counting that as towards, trees that could get, that would be counted or required for a tree permit. So he wanted to make sure that that was removed and that anybody that cutting down any trees requires a tree permit. I think one of the things when your town attorney was reviewing, wanted to kind of flag, and I'll turn it over to her to kind of talk a little bit about the issue. She wanted to have a discussion with the board to see if you wanted to include some language on this.
So what we're looking at here, obviously, the main objective and intention is protection of trees, right? And making sure that there's proper oversight before there's tree removal unnecessarily. However, the town has seen certain situations where we've been notified by concerned residents and property owners of trees that may or may not be dying or in poor condition or present a hazard or risk. And there's nothing mandatory about what happens in those situations. So looking at these proposed edits, for instance, under subsection D, removal of any tree that has been found to be dead, dying, insect infested, or otherwise hazardous, as determined in writing by a business letterhead by a recognized tree expert. So that means they can do it without a permit. Doesn't mean they have to do it. So did the board want to explore as part of this process when you're going through this chapter of the code anyway, if under certain circumstances, there would be a mandate upon property owners to take down trees that are in a hazardous condition?
Hazardous as in over somebody's house or like a neighbor's house, or hazardous as in?
I'm presenting a danger. I don't know if the location is necessarily relevant, unless you do. I mean, if it could fall in the street, if it could fall on someone's house, if it could fall on a person, I mean, does it, you know, I suppose those are
I'm
distinctions.
just thinking of how many trees the Emerald Ash Borer killed all at once, and the financial lift that would have been for an older resident who didn't have the financial ability to take down 15 ash trees on an acre of property. You know, but if they were in their yard and they were just going to fall and nobody's in the yard, then do they have that right?
I mean, that's a policy decision for the
so-
board to make. It's just that we've seen situations where the town is kind of stuck getting into the middle of disputes with property owners about situations like this. And even if the town were to find that these presented hazards, there's nothing in the code that you could go back to a property owner and say, you have to remedy this situation.
Okay, so endangering a neighboring property or structure or road is a fair compromise in my mind. Like, if there's a
So-
dead tree that's on someone's property in the dead middle of 10 acres and they don't want to take it down, I feel like that's on them. But if it's on their border of their property line and it's going to fall on the neighbor's jungle gym, then I think that's a very different story.
So it's basically if it could impact property that isn't their own.
Or if, I mean, isn't the current code, if somebody points out, or the current law that if you
That's
let
for
your neighbor
liability
know?
purposes.
Okay.
That's like, if they're put on notice and they don't do anything and then something happens, then you can sue them. But that's all looking into the future, that's not what can we do now or what are you required to do now? It's what might your rights be if and when, God forbid, something happens and there is damage or injury caused. What were the circumstances leading up to that? Who knew what? What the situation that I'm contemplating, and again, it's because this situation has come up recently and frequently, is I was not able to find anything currently in the town code where the town could go to a property owner and say, this is a hazard, it has to be removed. And so I'm
Okay.
just in the context of this discussion, because we're looking at the tree code, I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. You don't have to make a decision tonight. But since we're going through this exercise,
Yeah.
Valerie has gone through, the code. It seemed like if it was something the board wanted to address, now would be a good opportunity to do it.
No, I definitely think we should address it.
Yeah, I
Very
mean, even if we put down, if you cause a hazardous condition to your neighbor, property owner, adjoining property owner, then we should be able to step in. If it causes hazardous to town property, a sidewalk. Or a
Right of
neighboring,
way.
or right away.
Right of way
If it's in the
or
woods in the
road.
backyard, we don't care. Because it's only gonna fall on their property. Right, and if they wanna take it down to keep their family safe, fine. But if it's a neighbor, sidewalk, driveway, pet,
But
right away.
do we have to enlist this tree expert to determine?
I
If
think,
it's-
Yeah, I think it would
On a
have,
letterhead and all. that.
Yeah.
yeah,
So
or
I think
on,
that has to be
Yeah,
included,
right.
that, once the tree's inspected by the tree expert. And that person deems it
As
as it
is.
is or then, yeah, you gotta take it down.
do we want it to be, we could also have it as required by the town tree arborist. So that it's not a proper individual property owner getting somebody out there saying it's hazardous for my neighbor. Then automatically the town having to enforce it. It would be maybe a neighbor calling up the town building department saying, we think this is hazardous, have your tree.
as confirmed by the town's.
The situation, yeah, I'm contemplating, I think we've already, the code and Valerie's that it's already addressed the situation where a property owner says, hey, I think this tree is in bad shape, I want to take it down. I'm thinking about the scenario where either the town of its own volition or after being made aware of it by another property owner wants to then impose that requirement on the property owner where the tree is located.
But who's paying for the arborist to come out? Then we have to foot the bill every time there's a neighbor dispute. That
If it's deemed warranted, the building inspector goes out and looks on occasion, the highway superintendent goes out and looks on occasion. And they can sometimes make that assessment pretty easily that it seems to be in fair condition or they aren't concerned. But I think it would really be in a situation where if the town was going to require it, but there's also just the public interest aspect of it. But again, yes, that is an added cost but this would also be in your discretion. It's something you could enforce, but you're not obligated. There are lots of laws that, exist that you can enforce, but aren't always enforced regularly.
But right now, we have nothing on the book, so this is a
Correct.
start. This is a start.
I think it's important.
Yeah, I just don't want, somebody mad at their neighbor going, you have 15 trees that look dangerous to me. Now you have to take them down, all in the middle of your property, nowhere near mine, but
yeah, I agree for the public nuisance when it's gonna fall into a street or a sidewalk.
Or somebody else's.
So, yeah, but I think the way you described it, Christie, makes sense. So we don't have to do it.
So we'll work on, yeah, language for that.
And again, like we've talked about previously, this isn't the end of the process. We're gonna be coming back to the board in the context of public hearing, so we can review that revised language.
All right, the next section dealing with the permit application process. I mean, this really just kind of, again, this was more of and making edits more in line with the way the current process runs. So for example, you know, the amount of hard copies and electronic version, and that the permit shall be submitted to the building department instead of the town clerk, those types of edits. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to draw your attention to. The first, it was specifically in section 183-11, which is determination by the approving authority. So some of the factors in which the removal of a tree, regulated tree, may be favored upon the approval authority if, and then it lists particular, like more or less like findings that either the building department or the planning board, because they're both potentially approving authorities, would find during the tree permit. A couple things that we are proposing to remove as part of those findings is, one, the tree is an invasive species, because we are removing it from, we are requiring that you get all permits, tree removal permit for all invasive species. But then the other item is specifically solar access of nearby properties and that of the property owner. I think the concern for that is, or the recommendation to remove this is, while it does, you know, while trees do prohibit like solar access at times because of the shade, that should not be a determinative factor in whether something should be a tree removal or not.
Agreed.
That was the concern from the EAC, as well as, you know, I think some of the tree arborists, that we should remove that. It can be, that's not to say that it can't be considered as part of the overall application, but it's not mandatory that that has to be considered. Okay. Then the other item I want to talk a little bit more in detail about deals with the tree bank and the tree bank fund. So we are proposing, at this point in time, you do have a tree bank fund, so that if for some reason property owners are not able to replace the trees as required by the code, that they could put a fee in lieu of the trees on the property into the tree bank. One of the things that have come about discussions with the EAC over the years, as well as the your arborist, is that the tree bank, as it is defined and regulated right now, is it can only be used to plant new trees. But what they'd like to do is be able to also potentially use that funds to provide put forth and contribute to the overall health of trees on town property. So that would include like mulching, pruning, also adding like grates or structural like components for like trees, grading or preparing the site for tree establishment. Also, removal of invasive species to provide healthy growing environment for existing and future trees. So, because I think over the years, there have been some discussions about how can we create, you know, cut down some of the vines or remove some of the invasive tree species, or like trim trees that really do need to be trimmed. And all of that was additional costs, but this would allow for the town board to utilize some of that tree bank fund for those types of operations.
All right, does it include, I mean, we use the tree bank for our tree inventory.
Right, it would include that still as well. Yes.
Where's the tree bank fund come from? Is that in fee schedule?
From when people take down trees then they can't replace them. Developers take down multiple trees and they can't replace them on the property.
Where
They
did-
pay into the bank.
Is there a price already set?
Yes.
Yeah, 165.
5 a
I
caliper
think,
inch.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you do have, you do have funds at this point in time in the tree bank fund. So from a few developments, and there are probably potentially more,
Coming.
coming. So
That's what we paid for.
right, so the suggestion is to expand some of those other activities that could be funded through that. The other thing is tree donation. So there was a specific recommendation to also add that if a property owner, resident, or developer, if they want to, they can donate or plant trees in tree banks, which means the areas that are identified by the town that need trees on town property upon the consent of the town board, including when it may not be feasible to provide new trees or replacement trees on the property. So part of their thought was, instead of paying the caliber inch, which is like the 165 per caliber inch, that if for some reason somebody is proposing landscaping, but they, cannot provide all of that landscaping on site, but they want to donate trees, that in lieu of actually paying into the tree bank fund, they could actually give the town trees.
So to the same,
Consent of the town board.
Right.
So someone can't
Right.
just show up and say,
Right.
here's your tree, I don't owe you any
Right.
money,
But
right. And would that be determined by diameter as well?
well, it ultimately, but like the answer to that is yes, but I think we should clarify that it would have to be on a diameter, right? It would be in exchange for, instead of the same caliber would have to, so instead of paying, like, let's say, for example, they had to pay 3 inches in the tree bank fund, they would provide you a 3-inch tree. So equal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen the little twigs that people can give you.
Yes.
I have a question. There is a distinction. I didn't see it in here. Maybe I missed it. If the town or the homeowner is responsible for a tree that's within a certain distance to the road, 2 or 3 feet from the road, is it always the homeowner's responsible, or are there instances where the town is responsible for trimming the trees and
I don't have the.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
yes,
I had
I don't know the details, but it's my understanding there's a distinction as to whether a town is responsible for tree maintenance or removal if it's within a certain distance to the public roadway, 2 or 3 feet. Otherwise, the homeowner's responsible.
Or easement area.
yeah, okay, well, if it's a public, like, right of way, if it's part of the right of way.
No, all the
But-
homeowners on my street have trees that are at the curb, almost in the roadway. The town comes by and trims them. The branches that are overhanging in the street. The town has also removed a tree that was damaged by a storm a couple of years ago. Is there a stipulation either in the code or in any of the legal codes that say the town's responsible depending upon the distance the tree rests from the roadway, or?
I would need to know more about that specific situation if it was actually in the right of way. It may have been not in the street, but the right of way may extend beyond where the street actually is.
Matt, sometimes it's measured from the double yellow line, X number of feet. So sometimes it extends onto a lawn and that's our easement area, and
Mhm.
sometimes it doesn't.
Like,
So-
sometimes the actual right of way is, say, 50 feet wide, but the road is only developed to 30 feet wide. So you still have that additional space.
Mhm.
That's part of the right of way. I don't know the specific situation, so I can't speak to it, but that is a common scenario. And so if it's that close to the road, and I can think of other situations where that's the case, that it's part of the town's property.
So it would depend upon the specific location that we're talking about.
Yes.
It's not a standard. Okay, I got you.
Right, so that about sums up the proposed tree revisions. Are there any questions on that? So then the second document is some amendments to the Indian Brook Croton Gorge Watershed Overlay Protection District. This was a law that was passed about, I think, actually, it was about like a year or two ago. And this is to protect
Yeah.
land area within the Indian Brook
Watershed.
watershed. So as part of the open space plan, there were some additional areas that were identified of significant importance in terms of open space, natural resources. And so as part of that, we went back and looked at the Indian Brook Croton Gorge because there was already a lot of environmental regulations or protections in that area. And so this is just a couple little bit of amendments associated with that to basically implement your open space plan recommendations. And one specifically is with all new subdivisions of 2 lots or more shall be designed as a conservation cluster subdivision, right? So it's not saying that you can't subdivide, it would just be designed as a cluster subdivision. And that a minimum of 40% of a contiguous area of the parcel permanently preserved in its natural state. So
What does the current regulation say?
the current regulations say 30% right now, so we're increasing it to like 40%. The
50?
what?
No, can be 50. No,
Well, I think
I get it.
you already have, I mean, we can take a look at that, but you already have certain protections in terms of like the amount of developable coverage. And a lot of those areas are going to be like the residential districts. So we're saying of that area that's not developed, 40% has to remain in its natural state.
Okay.
Where, then they can, property owner could have a lawn area, and then you have the buildings and then other areas that are like more maintained as opposed to just completely in its natural
Oh,
state.
okay.
Are they able to go to the zoning board for more percentage if they need it? If they wanted to?
So, I mean, technically, I believe there is an appeals process. And it's, there's a section 117-10 is where the waiver process is, and you'd have to apply to the zoning board of appeals for that.
But it's a different standard than
Right.
your typical area variance. It's much higher.
Or if somebody wanted to challenge it, they have.
Extraordinary hardship. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Sorry, drinking. Then the other couple changes deal with section 117-18E, and it really focuses on buffers. So we're adding in a buffer adjacent to the Indian Brook Reservoir shall extend 200 feet horizontally away from the reservoir boundary or paralleling the delineated wetland boundary associated with the reservoir, whichever is greater. So basically, we're creating a buffer between the Indian Brook Reservoir and your neighboring properties from any sort of disturbance or development. The other thing we're adding is that you are allowed to have unpaved footpaths within that buffer, but it cannot be more than 4 feet wide and cannot take up more than 20% of the designated buffer area. Because there are some walking trails in the buffer area, but this is just sort of, so they're not necessarily causing irreparable like environmental harm, but we also don't want it to, have turn into like a 20-foot paved walkway type of thing. And then the last edit deals with the wetlands buffers, and this would be increased to 100. This one specifically is within 150 feet of wetlands, water bodies, and water courses, especially in areas where bank erosion is evident. The protected buffer shall be as wide as the site allows. But then it also specifically identifies specific vegetation selections that are listed in another section of this, so that we're encouraging native vegetation and appropriate vegetation in that area, which also helps with water quality and habitat.
Okay. And existing driveways just are grandfathered, right?
Yeah, so there are this is really for focusing on like more new development.
Okay.
Or expansion of what's existing.
Okay.
We're not gonna there's no regulations that say that people have to
Do anything, yeah.
do anything with what's already
They
there.
can maintain whatever they have
Mhm.
currently.
So if an existing house goes for an extension, to put a driveway, a garage on or addition to their home, would they be susceptible to?
So, yes, well, so if somebody decides to put a driveway and a garage on and it happens to go into a wetlands buffer, right, or a wetland area, then they would require, first of all, they require a wetlands permit under your code, but then there's additional regulations, so they might even require additional either a waiver from the zoning board because they have to prove like a hardship case or they would have to redesign it so that it wouldn't affect that area.
Thank you. Sounds good.
That's it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Good.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Valerie. Please like it when you join us.
Like I enjoy you.
Next up, we have discussion regarding filming in the town of Ossining and the local laws pertaining to it.
So that got complicated.
Did it?
Just a lot of nuances.
Oh, okay. So at the board's last work session, Martha was talking about the fee schedules for filming in the town. And we don't have any local law on the books regarding filming. So it was discussed while we were going through the exercise of reviewing the fee schedule. It might be a good opportunity to put some regulations on to authorize those fees and to contemplate the scenarios under which the town would permit filming and how that process would work. So when we were looking at the different fee schedules, the town board seemed to view favorably Newcastle and Croton as two municipalities where the approach they had taken wasn't too complicated, did account for different types of filming, so that it was more equitable to the particular applicant. And so those were the two that I kind of used as a template in drafting a local law for your review. And that was circulated to you last week. So as currently drafted, the definition of filming is the taking of motion pictures, commercials, and advertisements and television shows, whether on film, videotape, photograph, digital records, or by other recording medium for commercial, educational, for-profit, or not-for-profit purposes. And then it also includes ancillary type activities, on-site presence, mobilization, setup, running a cable, placing or storing of equipment and structures, parking of vehicles, etc. So this is a pretty standard definition. It's very broad. One thing that I noticed in the other definitions, and mind you that these other codes were drafted years ago, is whether there was any sort of social media content that the board wanted to include in the definition of filming. I am admittedly pretty ignorant when it comes to social media, so I can't be a ton of help in this regard.
I don't know that I'm any better than you are. And I don't know that, if they're using an iPhone, we're gonna be able to control it, so.
You know, if they're doing a TikTok or something like that, right, it's not really feasible, but there are YouTube channels, where it's a more structured programming. I don't know if that would fit under television shows, I don't know if there's any sort of nuanced distinction the board is aware of that should be included or that you would want to see attempt to be included.
Maybe we can put something utilizing, professional video cameras or defining what equipment is used at the time. Definitely not me to look at.
Is there such thing as a certified film company? Like,
It could be anything from a student to, with an iPhone to.
One of the codes actually
Is any of that considered protected speech?
It's not based upon content, so we're not, very carefully, the law doesn't say anything about content, it's time, place, and manner restriction.
Interesting.
But the definition for Newcastle for film and for commercial production does list entertainment providers with pretty detailed specificity. Universal Pictures, Warner Brothers, including New Line Cinema, Castle Rock Cinema, Village Roadshow, and Bel Air, Paramount, including MTV Films and Nickelodeon, 20th Century Fox, including Fox Searchlight, Sony Columbia, Disney Miramax, MGM, United Artists, like
Wow, they had them all.
very specific.
Specific.
I didn't get into that level of specificity.
No, I don't think you should.
We can keep it broad until we get more
Yeah.
action.
And then they also talked about streaming services for online providers. Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Hulu, Spotify, Apple Music. I thought that would be covered more by like television shows or something like that, so I didn't get. Yeah, I didn't start identifying any specific company or brand.
So maybe we can just go movie, streaming services, commercials, and just keep it really broad.
Yeah, I was gonna
Major
say
movie.
the broader the better.
Major movie.
Paid.
It's more, so that was specifically in the definition of commercial production. So it's a little bit different than here where the definition is of filming. So it's more about the activity rather than who's doing it. Because the way we had talked about it with the fees was that the main distinction was going to be for student or educational purposes in that they would not be required to get a permit or pay an application fee or a permit fee. They would only be required to submit the application to the town for informational purposes so that the town knows what's going on. So because the town wasn't contemplating that level of distinction, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, Martha, between all of those different
No.
types of filming, other than educational being pulled out, it didn't seem necessary to go down that path.
Okay.
Of course, in the
Agreed.
future, you decided to, then we would have to revisit it. Or whoever's sitting in the seats with it.
The one time I was looking at is the hours. Currently it's suggested that it doesn't go past dusk or past 7 p.m. I would say some filming that has taken place in Ossining was nighttime filming, so maybe that has to be approved on a case-by-case basis, either by the supervisor or the board.
So right now, the hours in there, I'm not sure where it
I
does.
think 10 now, sorry, 10 p.m. it says,
Yeah, the hours in there right now are between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. and that includes the ancillary activities, setup, breakdown.
Right.
And everything in between.
7 days a week.
Yeah.
That was a question. So I used what Croton allowed, which was 7 to 10. Newcastle allows 8 to 7. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention, that distinction, and also ask if the board had any preference as to whether weekends should be treated differently than weekdays, or something to that effect. You know, with cabaret licenses, they're allowed to go later on Friday and Saturday nights because the presumption is that people are less strapped for sleep, right? They're gonna be up a little bit later those nights anyway, so it's less of a nuisance.
Right, well, don't our noise ordinances have different times on Sunday and different times on?
Under this, if you're operating under a filming permit, you're not bound by those other regulations.
Right.
Because they would kind of necessarily conflict. So there's a provision that says if you're operating pursuant to a valid filming permit, then your building code, because they have to put like a tent or a temporary structure there, like
Yes, that,
you know, an RV or something like that. The noise code, parks, special events, vehicle and traffic zoning, all of those could be inconsistent with what's being done for the temporary purpose of the filming for as long as it's going on. So that's already contemplated.
Yeah, but my suggestion was to keep the filming hours to the similar hours of the disturbance hours. Unless otherwise.
Disturbance hours for noise.
Don't we have a 10 PM cutoff for noise, but it's earlier on Sundays and it's earlier on, I think cuts off at 8 o'clock. Yeah, you can't cut your alarm
Before
before.
9 or 10 on Sunday.
Well, that's,
So you
so
can't
those are
film.
different activities.
Well, you shouldn't be able to film for that.
I'm just saying mirror the time frame to the, not the different activity. Mirror the time frame unless they approach the supervisor or the board
Correct.
for, you know, with a reason why it's not going to be disturbing to the neighborhood to be, you know, doing,
Yeah,
filming at 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday.
I think it should be reasonable. I mean, what if somebody's doing a documentary in the mornings in Ossining, you know?
On the
saying,
sunrise,
No, you
yeah.
can't do it. Yeah, you can't do that, but there's no noise.
I was gonna say, it's gonna be hard to make this applicable to every,
Situation.
yeah, to every situation, because they, you know, think about like all the times you see film crews, you know, in the city, like at all hours of night sometimes. I mean, we're not in New York City, but I just think it's gonna be hard for.
Us
every
to
situation.
contemplate every
Yeah,
situation.
every
You
situation's
enforce
gonna-
any of this? How do we enforce? I think it's difficult.
OPD.
How?
No, when people set up a film crew, we hear.
Oh, I see. Complaints.
So the objective is more about getting them to submit the permit application beforehand.
Just
So-
for us to be aware and for us to, you know,
If
provide
there's-
OPD if needed.
Yeah, if there's needed municipal services,
Gotcha.
if the neighbors should be notified. So 2 points just before they slipped my mind. The noise code does, the prohibition is between 10 PM and 7 AM. So that does align with what's currently being proposed in the code. There is no distinction between day of the week. Except you can honk your horns for different hours, Mondays through Saturdays, than on Sundays and holidays.
Good to know.
Yeah, yeah. So be on the lookout for that. And the other thing just to note in the code based on what's been discussed is that I believe there is a provision that contemplates a waiver from any of these provisions if they're determined to be onerous. Waiver. The town board may by resolution authorize a waiver of any of the requirements and or limitations of this chapter on a case-by-case basis. If it determines that strict compliance with such limitations or requirements will pose an unreasonable burden on the applicant, and that such permit with waiver may be issued without endangering the public's health, safety, and welfare. And so this raises another corollary issue or aspect of this law to just raise briefly, is that provision is the town board, right? So if they want to waive something that's already in the law, they have to come to a board as a whole. However, from an administrative level, on a day-to-day basis, if they're going to comply and it's just processing the application, that just goes strictly through the supervisor's office in the which is going to be then just basically complying with what the law already is. So it would only have to come to the town board if there's proposed to be a deviation, or the applicant wants to be able to deviate from what's in the code. However, in the course of the supervisor's review of the permit application, the supervisor certainly, and the code specifically as drafted currently states that you can circulate it to whatever department heads or town personnel you deem necessary for input, kind of like we would for the special events law, you know. You send it to police, you send it to parks, like in order to be able to ascertain what may be appropriate, what potential issues could be under those circumstances, and that's certainly contemplated.
Okay, good.
And this is before the process. This is one before they start filming, right? All
Correct.
this.
This is when they submit the permit application, and then the supervisor is engaging in the review to determine whether the permit should be granted.
Is there something in there while they're filming, if something they need an extra day or they need an extra hour, they have to, with the supervisor, give that approval administratively?
If they want, if they deviate,
During the filming.
if they
Yes.
deviate from what's been permitted, so the permit can be issued, it can be issued with conditions or it can be denied. So if it's issued with conditions, or if it's just the conditions required by the code. And the applicant is found to deviate from that, then it gives the supervisor the authority to suspend or revoke the permit. Under those circumstances, so if it comes to the town's attention. That the applicant is exceeding the hours that are permitted by the code. Or they're extending into areas or into right of ways that weren't contemplated. The process would be to reach out to the filming crew and say, you know, there should be a contact person, that's all gonna be in the application. And say, and find out what's going on. And then if the issue can't be resolved through just an amendment of the application, then the supervisor would have the right to either temporarily suspend or revoke the permit in its entirety.
But it couldn't be amended by the supervisor.
Okay. Or give them an extension of a day if they hadn't completed.
Yeah, if it's just, we said we'll be done on April 26th, but we're gonna have to go to April 27th. Okay, send me an email. So, and then put
Yeah, just the
Okay.
supervisor.
staple it, yeah, that, it's.
They
only-
don't have to wait for a board meeting.
It's only if you're deviating from the specific code requirements. So like we were talking about, the hours of operation being between 7 AM and 10 PM. Something like that. And there aren't a lot of them because it is intended to be to a certain extent in the discretion of the supervisor, because like we were talking about, you don't know what specific circumstance is going to come up,
Right.
what the proposal is going to be. So there is a considerable amount of discretion to put those conditions and requirements into the permit in the first instance. It only has to come to this board if the proposal is going to deviate on its face from what is required.
Good.
Charge for the fees is gonna go into the fee schedule, right?
Yeah, and the reason for that is because the process for a local law is slightly more cumbersome. You have to call for a public hearing, hold a public hearing, the local law has to be sent to the state, it has to be added to the code, etc. Whereas the fee schedule can just be adopted by a simple resolution of the board at any regular or special meeting.
Well, in 93(2) sub D, there's a part about loss of income from businesses.
Oh, yeah, that was a carryover from. Do you not like that?
No.
Okay. I had a
think-
feeling that would be the direction you.
I think we
would-
just become a middleman for stuff we don't want to deal with. I can't deal with, really.
You estimate.
How do you estimate it?
I was
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
It's Newcastle affected business fee. Okay, so just for the benefit of the other board members who may not have honed in on that as quickly or as directly as you did. So
93(2) sub D.
okay. Where filming requires closure of any public right of way and thereby temporarily eliminates or significantly impedes access to an adjacent business, the supervisor in their sole discretion may require as a condition of the permit that the applicant compensate the affected businesses for the resulting loss of income caused, which compensation
May.
shall be in
May.
proportion to the duration of time for which the access is affected.
Why do we even want to contemplate that?
We don't really have a lot of scenarios, but you know, down on Main Street, if they're filming in one and they're blocking the entrance to the deli and nobody can get in there.
That's
But-
not the unincorporated.
Right, that's a, yeah,
But I mean, maybe we could direct them to reach a private agreement or something. I just think for us to estimate a loss of income. Or to listen to one stuff, it
Immediate.
becomes like a totally different.
So would you rather it say something
So you're
where
saying
in that
that.
situation, if it's going to impede access or interfere with the business, then the business needs to, you know, sign off on the
Yeah,
application?
Yeah, I prefer.
Or
that.
cons-
Or
Spend
the
the
applicant and the
application.
business have to come up with it.
Right, there has to
Yeah.
be some arrangement between them by which all the town needs to know is this business is now saying, I'm good with this.
Yeah.
Whatever you guys
Okay.
figure out on your own,
We'll come back up.
Yeah.
not our problem.
Yeah, I think if they consent, they probably reached whatever their
Right.
financial agreement.
Yeah,
is.
I like
Okay.
it. I like.
That's good.
Keep us out.
Yep. Thank you.
Did you find anything else?
Not yet.
Yeah. There's still time.
No,
You can
that's
talk to
very,
these-
very,
the
very
public
thorough,
hearing.
very good as all your work.
Well, I didn't want to plagiarize, so I did give credit where credit was due, but I did find some that were my own special, but yeah, for the most part, you know, why reinvent the wheel if you have other municipalities that have been doing it? Okay, so change to. Okay. Those are pretty much the highlights. Any comments, questions, concerns? I mean, there will be more time for the board to review, obviously. Procedurally, the next step would be for the board to call for a public hearing, which you could do at your meeting next week. For a public hearing to be held on May 12th.
Good.
That's good.
Okay, yeah,
There will be a meeting on it.
yes.
Not before, not the Tuesday.
Yes. Not the Tuesday before, I'm just checking. Okay.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. All right, so that concludes our work session. And we will see you on the 28th at the courthouse for our legislative meeting.
Do you have a motion and a second for executive session?
So moved.
Second.
For advice council, contracts and personnel.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you and have a good evening.